Hello, I'm Dr. Arnaud. If you're watching this video, you're likely interested in knowing what the NUCCA adjustment is all about and what I do on the side of your neck. Because everyone always asks me, what is that noise? What are you doing to the side of my neck? So I thought I'd take a few minutes to explain that to everybody. So I always start with explaining that people have what we call patterns of misalignment. So when you look at somebody that's 90 years old and they look like this, they don't look like this one day, and they look like this another day, because this is a pattern of misalignment that develops over a lifetime. So someone's 30, they're 40, they're 50, they're 70, they're 80, they're 90. And those patterns of misalignment are based on biomechanical weaknesses that occur over the course of time. So everyone has a specific pattern of misalignment. So when they have injuries, they misalign in that pattern. So when you first came in, we took x-rays with head clamps and we analyzed the computer analysis of that pattern. We used head clamps to make sure we get an accurate x-ray, because without an accurate measurement, we can't get an accurate correction. And then what we do is we look at the upper part of the spine. This is the base of the skull, and this is the first bone. And when you look at the first bone in the neck, it's shaped like a wedge. And physics dictates when you put a force into a wedge, a certain amount of force goes down and a certain amount of force goes up. So as a result, there's movement both below and above that joint. When you came in, we measured the slope of the lower slope and the upper slope, so we calculated where that force bifurcates equally in your case. And then once we know where the force bifurcates equally, we can use physics to plug in an equation to determine how we want to alter that line of correction so that we can move the head and the neck in a direction we want, so that we use this bone to completely correct the head and the neck. The reason why that's essential is the nervous system controls how your posture sits. So whenever this is off center, the entire body misaligns underneath it. And regardless of where you have an injury, if this is not balanced, you cannot maintain that correction as well as you otherwise would. And the challenge is, if you use rotational maneuvers or general maneuvers, you get a general mobilization, but you don't necessarily get a specific correction. So what we do is, using physics, we then determine how to move the bones where we want, and then we use leverage. So I always explain to people that when you take a mass, imagine that this is a head. If you set a mass at its center of gravity, it's balanced. And if you want it to move away from you, you set it below the center of gravity, and you can create some tilt so that that mass moves away from you. And if you want it to move towards you, you set it above the center of gravity. So by using the fulcrum of the headpiece, we can control which way the head is going to move in response to a force at the side of the neck. And then what we do is we create a fixed point against the side of the neck, and we create a force on one side of a fixed point. But since this doesn't move, you don't feel anything. But as that force hits the neck, it causes the skull to tip, the neck to realign, and it creates that audible that most people think is my wrist. And so you'll see when we adjust you, we'll position the headpiece, we'll adjust your head accordingly. You'll hear me measure the direction I'll adjust down, and then we create that moment force on one side of a fixed point, and we use physics, leverage, to move that bone. And the beauty of that adjustment is it's 100% predictable, it's 100% safe, and it is the most effective way to correct the upper cervical spine. And in order to correct the spine in its entirety, the upper cervical spine needs to be corrected specifically. And that's NUCCA. Thank you for your time. I'm Dr. Arnaud at the Balanced Body Center.